The UES Perseverance was the oldest ship still flying in humanity's fleet. She was 50 years old, covered in patch welds, and held together by stubborn engineers who refused to let her die. Her hull was scratched and dented. Her engines made sounds that no manual could explain. The crew joked that she ran on duct tape and prayers. Captain Mira Okonkwo stood on the bridge and looked at the flickering screens around her. She had been demoted twice in her career. Once for disobeying orders to save civilian lives, once for telling an admiral exactly what she thought of his battle plans. Now she commanded this floating museum piece, and everyone knew it was meant as an insult. Her crew of 73 were just like her. Rejects, failures, people the military wanted to forget. There was Yusuf Adayami, the communications officer who had published theories that made other scientists laugh at him. There was Chief Engineer Daniela Reyes, who had been removed from a destroyer for excessive creativity with ship systems. There was Ensign Tommy Park, who had accidentally broken the nose of an admiral's nephew during a bar fight. They were not heroes. They were the people nobody wanted. When the Galactic Concord announced a joint exploration mission into the hollow expanse, Earth's military sent their finest ships, sleek destroyers with advanced weapons, carriers filled with fighter craft, the pride of humanity's fleet. And then, because of a bureaucratic error that nobody bothered to fix, they also sent the Perseverance. The hollow expanse was a region of space that terrified every species in the galaxy. Ships went in. Ships did not come out. For 10,000 years, expeditions had vanished without a trace. No distress signals. No wreckage. Nothing. The Concorde had finally gathered enough courage to send a massive combined fleet to solve the mystery once and for all. All Myra watched through the viewport as alien vessels gathered around the human ships. The Veltri cruisers were beautiful things, all smooth lines and glowing energy shields. They looked like sculptures made of light. The Corvin dreadnoughts were the opposite. Massive and brutal, covered in weapon ports, built for one purpose only. War. The aliens did not hide their opinions about the Perseverance ambassador. Desic of the Veltri Dominion was a tall being with silver skin and eyes that held nothing but contempt. He toured the human flagship and stopped when he saw the Perseverance through a window. His thin lips curled into a smile. "What is that?" he asked the human admiral standing beside him. "A survey vessel," the admiral replied, embarrassment clear in his voice. "There was a mistake in the assignment orders." "Mistake," Desic repeated. He turned to his aides and spoke in his own language, but the translator caught every word. "If the humans wish to send their garbage to die first, we should let them." The Veltri laughed. The human admiral said nothing. Word spread quickly through the fleet. The alien crews made jokes about the human antique. Corvin warriors said they could destroy it with a single shot. Veltri scientists wondered how it even achieved faster-than-light travel with such primitive technology. On the Perseverance, the crew heard every joke, every insult, every whispered comment. Mira gathered them in the cargo bay, the only space big enough to hold everyone. "Know what they're saying about us?" she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "I know what they think. And I want you to know something. I don't care. We're here. We have a job to do. And we're going to do it better than anyone expects." Daniela Reyes raised her hand. "Captain, with respect, our job is basically to stay out of the way and not embarrass humanity too much." A few people laughed. Myra smiled. "Then let's exceed expectations," she said. "Let's not embarrass humanity at all." The fleet entered the hollow expanse 3 days later. 200 ships from 12 different species, moving in perfect formation. The Perseverance flew at the back where nobody had to look at her. For the first few hours, everything was normal. Stars passed by. Sensors showed empty space. The commanders began to relax. Then the darkness came alive. It started as a flicker on the screens. A strange energy reading that nobody could identify. Then another. Then 100 more. The readings spread like fire, surrounding the fleet in moments. Alarms screamed on every ship. Navigation systems failed. Weapons went offline. Shields flickered and died. The most advanced technology in the galaxy became useless in seconds. Mira gripped her command chair as the Perseverance shook. Around her, screens went dark. Lights failed. For one terrible moment, she thought they were dead. Then the emergency power kicked in. The old backup systems, designed 50 years ago, hummed to life. They were too simple to be affected by whatever was attacking the fleet. Report. Mira shouted. Yusef's fingers flew across his console. Captain, our main systems are down, but the backups are holding. We have basic sensors, basic propulsion, basic communications. What about the rest of the fleet? There was a long pause. Yusef looked up, his face pale. They're gone, Captain. Every ship. They just ... vanished, one by one. Pulled somewhere by forces I can't even measure. Mira stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, there was nothing but empty darkness. 200 ships. Thousands of crew members. The pride of a dozen civilizations gone. Only the Perseverance remained. How? Daniela whispered. How are we still here? Mira looked at the ancient consoles around her, the outdated systems, the technology that every other species had mocked. Because we're too old, she said slowly. Too primitive? Whatever that energy field does, it targets advanced systems. We're so outdated that it didn't even recognize us as a threat. The irony was not lost on anyone. They had survived because they were flying garbage. Why Asu suddenly straightened in his chair. Captain, I'm picking something up. A signal. It's buried in all the interference, but it's definitely there. And it's not random. There's a pattern. A mathematical pattern. Source. Unknown. But it's close. Very close. Mira looked at her crew. 73 people who had been forgotten by their own species. 73 people flying the ship that everyone laughed at. They were alone in the most dangerous region of space, surrounded by unknown forces. With no backup and no rescue coming, she should have been afraid. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Set a course for that signal, she ordered. Whatever is out there, whatever took those ships, we're going to find it.
Right. Nobody argued.
Nobody questioned. They simply obeyed. The Perseverance, oldest and weakest ship in the fleet, turned toward the unknown. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, something ancient waited for them. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. Something that had finally found what it was looking for. The signal led them deeper into the darkness. For 3 days, the Perseverance traveled alone through empty space. No stars, no planets. Nothing but the cold void and the strange. Transmission that pulled them forward like a whisper in the night. Yusuf Adayami had not slept since they started following the signal. He sat at his console, headphones pressed tight against his ears, listening to patterns that nobody else could hear. His eyes were red and tired, but his mind was racing. It's not just mathematics, he told Captain Okonkwo on the 3rd day. It's language. Old language. Older than anything I've ever seen. Mira stood behind him, looking at the streams of data flowing across his screen. Can you translate it? Parts of it. The structure is similar to theoretical models I published years ago. Models about pre-galactic civilizations. He laughed bitterly. The same models that got me kicked out of the university and sent to this ship. What do the models say? Yusuf turned to face her. His expression was strange. Half excited, half terrified. They say this signal might be from the architects. The word hung in the air like a ghost. Everyone on the bridge stopped what they were doing. Even the hum of the engine seemed to grow quiet. The architects were the oldest mystery in the galaxy. 3 million years ago, they had built the hyperspace lanes that every species used to travel between stars. Without those lanes, interstellar civilization would be impossible. The architects had given the galaxy its greatest gift, and then they had simply vanished. No bodies, no ruins, no explanation. They had become legends, gods, myths. That's impossible, Daniela said from her engineering station. The architects are gone. They've been gone for 3 million years. Gone doesn't mean dead, Yusuf replied. It just means we don't know where they went. The signal grew stronger as they traveled. On the fourth day, their sensors detected something ahead. A structure, massive beyond imagination, hidden in a fold of collapsed space that no normal ship could have found. It was a station. A station the size of a small moon, built from materials that their computers could not identify. It did not reflect light. It did not emit heat. It simply existed, ancient and patient, waiting in the darkness. All stop, Myra ordered quietly. Hold position. The Perseverance drifted to a halt. For a long moment, nobody spoke. They simply stared at the impossible thing floating before them. Then the station spoke. The voice came through every speaker on the ship. It was neither male nor female, neither warm nor cold. It simply was. You've arrived, the voice said. You are the first in 7,000 years to reach this place. I am the warden. I have been waiting, Akeva. Mira stepped forward, though there was nothing to step toward. Waiting for what? For someone worthy. For someone who might understand. Understand what? The question? The main view screen flickered. Images appeared. Ships of every design, from every species, stretching back thousands of years. Corvin warships. Velthari science vessels. Craft from civilizations that no longer existed. Hundreds of them. Thousands. All of these came to the hollow expanse, the warden explained. All of them sought the architect's inheritance. All of them were tested. All of them failed. Failed how? Yusef asked. They answered the question incorrectly, and so they were removed. Mira felt cold. Removed? You mean killed? Preserved? Suspended? Kept in a space between spaces? Alive but frozen? Until someone answers correctly.
Oh.
The warden paused. Your fleet is there now. The ships that vanished. They are not dead. They are waiting, just as all the others wait. Relief flooded through the bridge. The fleet was alive. The crews were alive, but that relief quickly turned to fear. What is this question? Mira asked. The architects built the hyperspace lanes. They gave the galaxy the gift of connection. But they left behind something greater. A true inheritance. The power to travel not just between stars, but between dimensions. Between realities. Between everything that is and everything that could be. The images on the screen changed. Now they showed something else. Doorways opening to impossible places. Worlds beyond counting. Resources beyond measure. A universe of universes, infinite and eternal. This power could not be given freely, the warden continued. It had to be earned. And so, the architects created a test. A single question. Answer correctly, and your vessel will be transformed. It will ascend beyond the limits of normal physics. It will become the key that opens every door. And if we answer wrong, Daniela asked, then you will join the others, preserved forever, waiting for someone else to succeed where you failed. The bridge was silent. Myra looked at her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but she also saw something else. Determination. These were people who had been told their whole lives that they were not good enough, that they were failures, that they did not matter. Now the fate of every ship in the fleet rested on their shoulders. Ask your question, Mira said. The warden spoke. Thousands of species have stood where you stand now. The Corvin, the mightiest warriors in the galaxy, answered that the purpose of the weak is to serve the strong. They failed. The Velthari, the most intelligent minds in known space, answered that the purpose of the weak is to be improved or removed. They failed. Every species has given some version of the same answer. Strength rules. Weakness submits. Power decides. There was a long pause. And so I ask you, humans, what is the purpose of the weak? Mira thought about her crew, about Yusuf, whose ideas had been mocked until he was exiled to this ship, about Daniela, whose creativity had been punished instead of praised, about Tommy Park, who had made one mistake and been marked forever, about herself, demoted for caring too much about lives that her superiors considered unimportant. she thought about the Perseverance itself. The oldest, weakest, most pathetic ship in the fleet. The ship that had survived when every advanced vessel had failed. She thought about humanity. The youngest species in the Concorde? The smallest. The most overlooked. The ones that every other civilization dismissed as primitive children, and then she understood. The weak, Mira said slowly, "Remind the strong why strength matters." The warden did not respond. "The weak are not a burden," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "They are the reason we build. They are the reason we fight. They are the reason strength has meaning at all." She stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "We don't protect the weak because they're useful. We protect them because that's what makes us worth being strong in the first place." Silence filled the station. Seconds passed, then minutes. Finally, the warden spoke. "In 3 million years, you are the first to understand." The station began to move. Reality itself began to bend and everything changed. The transformation began with light. It started at the edges of the Perseverance, spreading across the hull like fire made of stars. The old metal plates, scarred and patched from 50 years of service, began to glow. They did not melt. They did not burn. They simply became something else. Inside the ship, every crew member felt it. A vibration that went deeper than sound. A warmth that touched not just their bodies, but something inside them. Something they could not name. Mira gripped her command chair as the bridge twisted around her. The walls stretched and folded. The screens flickered through 1 million images in a single second. She heard voices speaking in languages that had never existed, saw colors that human eyes were not built to see, and through it all, the warden spoke. The architects did not vanish, the ancient voice explained. They evolved. They moved beyond the limits of physical existence. They became part of the fabric of reality itself, and they left behind the means for others to follow. Why? Mira gasped, struggling to speak through the overwhelming sensation. Why leave this gift? Because the universe is vast, infinite. There are realms beyond counting, dimensions without end. The architects knew that no single species could explore it all. They needed others. They needed inheritors. The light grew brighter. The vibration grew stronger. But they also knew that power without wisdom is destruction. So they created the test. The question. They needed to find species that understood a simple truth. That strength without compassion is meaningless. That power without purpose is empty, Asuf cried out from his station. His console was changing, merging with the ship around him. New screens appeared, showing data in forms he had never imagined. Star maps that included dimensions. Energy readings from places that did not exist in normal space. The Corvin are strong, the warden continued, but they believe the weak exist only to serve them. If they gained this power, they would conquer and destroy. The Velthari are intelligent, but they believe the weak should be improved or eliminated. If they gained this power, they would reshape the universe in their own image, destroying everything that was different. Daniela watched in awe as the engineering systems transformed around her. The old reactor, the one that had barely kept the ship running, became something else entirely. A controlled singularity, a black hole smaller than a grain of sand, producing more power than a star. But you, humans, gave a different answer. You said the weak give strength its meaning. You said protecting them is what makes power worthwhile. The warden's voice held something that might have been emotion. This is what the architects believed. This is why they built. This is why they evolved. Not to rule, but to protect. Not to conquer, but to open doors. The transformation reached its peak. For one eternal moment, the Perseverance existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Every member of the crew saw the universe as the architects had seen it. Layers upon layers of reality, stacked like pages in an infinite book. Doorways waiting to be opened. Worlds waiting to be found. Then it ended. The light faded. The vibration stopped. The crew opened their eyes and looked around at a ship they barely recognized. The bridge was the same shape, but the walls now seemed to breathe with soft light. The screens showed not just normal space, but the spaces between spaces. The command chair still held Mira, but now it responded to her thoughts before she even spoke them. Tommy Park was the first to stand. He walked to a viewport and looked outside.
Captain.
He whispered, "You need to see this." Mira joined him. What she saw took her breath away. The Perseverance floated in normal space again, but she was no longer the same ship. Her hull was smooth and dark, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. She seemed to fade at the edges as if she existed only partially in this dimension. And surrounding her, visible only to her new sensors, were thousands of doorways. Portals to other places, other times, other versions of reality. "We have ascended," the warden said. Its voice now came from within the ship itself. "I have merged with your vessel. I will guide you. I will teach you. But the choices will always be yours. What can we do now?" Daniela asked, staring at her engineering readouts with wide eyes. "What has this ship become?" "You are a threshold vessel. The first in 3 million years. You can open doors that no other ship can open. You can travel to places that no other ship can reach. You can anchor unstable space, stabilize dying stars, and connect dimensions that have never been connected before." "Can we save the fleet?" Mira asked. "The ships that were taken? Can we bring them back?" "Yes. They are preserved in a pocket of frozen space. You can reach them whenever you choose." Mira nodded slowly. Relief washed over her. But it was quickly replaced by something heavier: responsibility. The weight of what they had become pressed down on her shoulders. "The galaxy will see what you have become," the warden warned. "Every sensor in known space is detecting your transformation as we speak. You are now visible across all frequencies, all dimensions. There is no way to hide what you are." "What does that mean for us?" Yusuf asked. "It means everyone will want what you have. The Corvin will try to take it by force. The Velthari will try to take it through manipulation. Others will beg. Others will threaten. You have become the most important object in the known universe." Crew exchanged looks. Just hours ago, they had been the laughingstock of the galaxy, the joke that nobody wanted to hear. Now they held the key to everything. "Why us?" Tommy asked quietly. "Why did we pass when everyone else failed?" The warden's answer was gentle. "Because you knew what it meant to be weak. You knew what it meant to be overlooked and dismissed. And you knew, deep in your hearts, that being weak did not make you worthless. That knowledge is rare. That knowledge is precious. That is why the architects chose their tests so carefully." Mira looked at her crew. The rejects. The failures. The forgotten ones. They looked back at her with new light in their eyes. Not the light of power, but the light of understanding. They had been given something incredible. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they knew a truth that stronger and smarter species had forgotten. "Set a course for the fleet," Myra ordered. "We have people to save." Perseverance turned, her new engines bending space around her, and moved toward the pocket dimension where thousands waited in frozen sleep. Behind her, messages were already spreading across the galaxy. Reports of what had happened. Warnings about what the humans now possessed. And in the halls of power across 100 worlds, plans were being made. The weakest vessel had ascended. Now everyone wanted to know. What would happen next? The news spread faster than any ship could travel. Within hours, every government in the Galactic Concord knew what had happened in the hollow expanse. The human antique, the 50-year-old joke, had done what no other vessel in 10,000 years had accomplished. It had passed the architect's test. It had transformed into something new, something powerful, something that every empire in the galaxy had dreamed of possessing, and it belonged to humanity. The Velthari Dominion responded first. Ambassador Vesic, the same official who had called the Perseverance garbage, sent a formal demand to Earth's government. The vessel must be surrendered immediately. It must be studied by proper scientific minds who could understand its true potential. The Velthari offered nothing in return except the promise that they would use the knowledge wisely. The Corvin. The Empire was less polite. Their message was simple. Bring us the ship, or we will come and take it. Humanity had 1 week to decide. A coalition formed almost overnight. 12 species signed a joint ultimatum. They declared that the Perseverance represented a threat to galactic stability. Such power could not be trusted to the youngest, most primitive species in known space. The ship must be handed over to a joint Concord authority. If humanity refused, they would face united military action. On Earth, panic spread through the government. The president called emergency meetings that lasted through the night. Admirals argued with diplomats. Scientists argued with generals. Nobody knew what to do. They sent a message to Captain Okonkwo. Return immediately. Surrender the vessel to Concord Authority. It was the only way to avoid war. Mira read the message in silence. Around her, the transformed bridge of the Perseverance hummed with power that defied description. Through the viewports, she could see the pocket dimension where thousands of trapped ships floated in frozen silence, waiting to be rescued. What are you going to do? Yusuf asked. Mira deleted the message. My job. They rescued the fleet 1 ship at a time. The Perseverance opened doorways into the frozen space, pulled vessels through, and returned them to normal reality. Corvin dreadnoughts. Velthri cruisers. Human destroyers. Ship after ship, crew after crew. Saved by the vessel they had mocked, Ambassador Visik woke on his cruiser to find a human medic checking his vital signs. He pushed the medic away and demanded to know what had happened. When they showed him the Perseverance through a viewport, he did not speak for a long time. The rescued fleet returned to Concord space. The crews told their stories. They described the darkness that had swallowed them, the frozen sleep that had held them, and the ancient ship that had pulled them back to life. The ship that everyone had laughed at. The crew that everyone had dismissed it did not change the minds of those in power. The Coalition fleet, gathered near Earth's solar system. 300 warships from 12 species, more firepower than humanity had ever faced. They gave Earth a final choice. Surrender the Perseverance or be destroyed. Earth's government begged Myra to comply. They sent message after message. They offered her promotions, rewards, anything she wanted. Just bring the ship home and end this crisis. She refused. Instead, she broadcast a message across all channels. Every ship in the Coalition heard it. Every government in the Concord saw it. Every citizen with a receiver watched Captain Miro Okonkwo speak. I understand why you're afraid, she said. Her voice was calm and steady, the voice of someone who had nothing left to prove. This power is incredible. It could change everything, and you don't trust us with it. Why would you? We're the youngest species in the Concord. The smallest, the most overlooked. She paused, letting her words sink in. But you're missing something important. The architects didn't test ships. They didn't test technology. They tested ideas. They asked what we believed about strength and weakness. And we gave the right answer, while your species gave the wrong ones. On the bridge of the Corvin flagship, Admiral Vorath slammed his fist against his console. Enough of this fire. 100 missiles launched toward the Perseverance. They crossed the distance in seconds. The Coalition commanders watched their screens, waiting for the explosion. The missiles passed through the ship as if it was made of smoke. You cannot destroy us, Mira continued. Not because we're more powerful than you, but because we exist differently now. We're not fully in your reality anymore. Your weapons can't touch us. Admiral Vorath ordered another volley, then another. Beams of energy, nuclear warheads, weapons that had destroyed planets. Everything passed through the Perseverance without effect. But we don't want to fight you, Mira said. That's not why the architects gave us this gift. They showed us something. Beyond the doorways we can now open, there are other galaxies, other dimensions, resources beyond counting, space beyond imagination. Enough for everyone. The wars you fight, the empires you build, they're all based on the idea that there's not enough. But there is enough. There's more than enough. She leaned forward, her eyes fierce. You want this ship? Then prove you deserve it. Not with weapons. Not with threats. Show us you understand why the architects chose the weakest vessel. Show us you can protect something besides yourselves. The transmission ended. The Coalition fleet hung in space, weapons useless, commanders speechless. In the days that followed, the situation grew worse before it grew better. Earth's colonies were blockaded. Trade routes were cut. Supplies grew short. The Coalition could not destroy the Perseverance, but they could strangle humanity slowly. The crew watched from their transformed ship as their people suffered. Tommy Park wanted to use their new power to break the blockade by force. Daniela argued for negotiation. Yusuf suggested fleeing to another dimension entirely. Mira listened to all of them. Then she made her decision. We're going to prove our point, she said. Not with words. With actions. The architects tested beliefs. Now we're going to test theirs. How? Yusuf asked. We're going to find someone who needs help. Someone the Coalition doesn't care about. And we're going to help them. We're going to show the galaxy what this power is really for. She turned to her crew. The rejects. The failures. The ones who had never been given a chance. We're going to show them what the weak can do when they finally have strength. The Perseverance turned away from Earth, away from the Coalition fleet, and headed toward the edges of known space. The galaxy watched and waited to see what the humans would do next. What they did changed everything. 3 months passed. 3 months of blockades and embargoes. 3 months of hunger on human colonies and tension across the galaxy. 3 months of the Coalition waiting for humanity to break. But humanity did not break. And neither did the crew of the Perseverance. They traveled to the forgotten corners of the galaxy. Places where no empire bothered to look. Places where the weak and the overlooked struggled to survive. They found a world called Thesan Minor, home to a species that had never achieved faster-than-light travel. A plague was killing them by the millions. The Coalition had refused to help. The Thesoni were too primitive to matter. The Perseverance opened a doorway to a dimension where the cure existed naturally. They brought it back. They saved billions of lives. They found a system where 2 moons were about to collide, threatening a colony of refugees that no empire would accept. The Perseverance anchored the moons in stable orbits. The refugees survived. They found a dying star that was about to explode and destroy 12 inhabited planets. The Coalition had written off those planets as acceptable losses. The Perseverance opened a doorway to another dimension and channeled the star's energy away. 12 worlds lived. News of these deeds spread slowly at first, then faster and faster. The humans with the impossible ship were not building an empire. They were not gathering allies for war. They were simply helping anyone who needed help. Cracks began to appear in the Coalition. A Corvin commander named Varith's own nephew broke formation during a patrol. He had received news that a human medical frigate was delivering supplies to a plague-stricken neutral world. His orders were to stop them. Instead, he escorted them safely to their destination. When asked why, he said only, "I watched the recordings from the Hollow Expanse. I saw what they did for our fleet. They saved us when they had every reason to leave us frozen forever. I will not be the one to stop them from saving others." He was not alone. Across the galaxy, soldiers and officers began to question their orders. Scientists released findings that supported Yusuf's theories about the architects. They were exiled for their heresy. They traveled to human space, where they were welcomed. A dozen minor species, tired of being crushed between the great empires, quietly withdrew from the Coalition. They offered Earth what little support they could. It was not much, but it was something. The breaking point came on a day when the Perseverance detected a familiar signal, a distress call from deep space. The original exploration fleet, the one that had been rescued from the pocket dimension, had ventured out again. This time, they had found trouble they could not escape. A spatial anomaly was pulling them toward destruction. They had hours left to live. The fleet included Velthari cruisers, Corvin dreadnoughts, human destroyers, and Ambassador Vesek's own ship. Mira stood on the bridge and looked at the distress signal. Around her, the crew waited for her decision. They all knew what Vesek had said about them. They all knew what the Coalition had done to their people. She did not hesitate. "Open a threshold," she ordered. "We're going to save them." The Perseverance folded space around itself and emerged next to the dying fleet. The anomaly was vast and hungry, a wound in reality itself that pulled everything toward oblivion. Normal ships could not escape its gravity, but the Perseverance was not a normal ship. Working for hours without rest, the crew anchored the threshold and pulled ships through one by one. The work was exhausting. The strain on their systems was immense. Twice, the warden warned them that they were pushing too hard. Risking damage that could not be repaired, they pushed anyway. When the last ship was safe, the Perseverance sealed the threshold and collapsed the anomaly behind it. The fleet floated in normal space, saved against all odds by the crew that had every reason to let them die. Ambassador, Zek requested permission to board the Perseverance. Mira granted it. He came alone. Walking through corridors that hummed with ancient power, he found Myra on the bridge, exhausted but standing tall. The crew around her looked just as tired. They had given everything to save people who had treated them as garbage. The sick did not speak at first. He simply looked at them. His silver face showed emotions that Velthory rarely displayed: confusion, shame, and something that might have been wonder. Then he knelt among the Velthory. Kneeling was the highest gesture of respect. It acknowledged someone as a superior being. In all of recorded history, no Velthory had ever knelt before an alien. "I called you garbage," Thesic said quietly. "I demanded your ship be taken. I supported the blockade of your worlds." He looked up at Myra with ancient eyes. "And you've saved us anyway." "Why?" Mira smiled. She was so tired that she could barely stand, but she smiled. "Because that's what the power is for," she said. "Not to punish, not to conquer, to help, to protect, to lift up those who need lifting." She reached down and helped him to his feet. "That's what the architects understood. That's why they chose us. And that's what we're going to teach the galaxy, one open door at a time." 1 year later, the Perseverance opened the first permanent threshold gate. It connected the Milky Way to the Architects' network. Beyond it lay other galaxies, other dimensions, other possibilities. Enough room for every species. Enough resources for every empire. Enough wonder to last 1,000,000 lifetimes. The crew of the Perseverance did not become rulers. They did not build an empire. They became custodians, guardians of the gate, and they invited everyone through. Not everyone accepted at first. Old hatreds died slowly. Old fears lingered. But one by one, species began to step through the threshold. They found not conquest, but welcome. Not domination, but cooperation. The age of scarcity ended. The wars that had defined galactic history became memories, Captain Mira. Okonkwo made her final log entry on the anniversary of their transformation. "They feared us because they didn't understand," she wrote. "The architects didn't choose the strongest ship or the most advanced crew. They chose the ones who knew what it meant to be underestimated, overlooked, written off. Because only those who have been weak understand why strength must be used to lift others." She looked around the bridge at her crew: Yusef, whose heretical theories had become the foundation of a new science; Daniela, whose creative engineering had taught a dozen species how to build threshold gates; Tommy, who had become the most respected diplomat in human history; the rejects, the failures, the forgotten ones. They had changed the galaxy. "That's the inheritance," Mira wrote. "That's what we carry now, and that's what we'll teach them. One open door at a time." She closed the log and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, new doors were waiting to be opened. New worlds were waiting to be found. New species were waiting to be lifted up, and the weakest vessel in humanity's fleet would be there to show them the way.